Fox News contributor David Webb, along with Democratic pollster Mark Penn. You know, David, last century when you and I were kids, people in our generation, it was a goal, it was aspirational to move to California, New York. You really made it. Now, the statistics show Gen Z, the most mobile generation, 17% of them having moved in the last year, they're seeking out Texas and West Virginia. It can't just be the sunshine and no state income tax. People complain about cost of living, crime, but are you surprised by all of this, that California, our most populous state, can actually lose seats?
No, I'm not, Kellyanne, and there are a variety of factors. Now, I'll go backwards to bring us to where we are. I ran decennial census operations in 2000. Following that, I ran some of the migration studies, the out-migration from states, and the reasons were pretty common, right? Retirement, people were leaving for economic reasons, but now you add crime, quality of life, and then for younger people, opportunity, but they're going where they can actually, whether they're living with friends or by themselves, plant their feet, and we're seeing that grow in numbers. The other thing is they're not going back, and it's too early to tell right now, but since COVID lockdowns, and you add high taxes, high cost of living in these cities and states, the young people are just not going to go back there because they can't afford it. You have a $5,000 average in New York City for an apartment, a small one-bedroom. Who's going to move to Texas, Florida, or other states and then want to go back to that and add tax burden to it? It's just not going to happen.
And Mark Penn, you are a public opinion expert, so you see the attitudes in the polls constantly. But I want to ask you what the Democratic Party can expect to do if they start losing major seats in, quote, blue states like California and New York. And the ones set to gain, we talked about Florida and Texas, but also on the list are Idaho, Utah, North Carolina, other places where people are migrating. Do you think this is a real concern for the Democratic Party?
Well, it is fascinating that it is younger people who are moving, Kellyanne. And as you said before, people used to see opportunity in New York and California, and now they're seeing it in a lot of different states, and especially Florida and Texas. But the question is, are they going to adopt the politics of the areas they move to, or are they going to change that politics? Are Republicans going to be worried that Texas might tip over to the Democratic Party if too many young people who typically vote 60-40 Democratic move to Texas? The same thing could happen to Florida, which used to be a lot more Democrat, which was a Democratic state before it was a Republican state. And so I don't know whether or not this is going to portend a change in these states, or whether or not Democrats are really going to lose voters and seats. Certainly, these two states are going to lose seats, no question about it.
It is fascinating. Our own Sean Hannity fact-checked Gavin Newsom in real time when he claimed that there is not blue to red state migration. There certainly is from California to Florida and other states. And it goes, I think, according to the policies you both cited. But David, given your work on these projects in the past, what are you looking for demographically that's changed? We just seem to be a much more diverse society. When they're deciding how many districts each state has, and then when the parties are trying to gerrymander and redistrict those districts, what concerns you, or what should we be looking out for in the next couple of years?
I think Mark brings up a really good point. What about the politics? Now, politics are often driven by life circumstance. When you're in your 20s versus in your 30s, maybe as you pair up with a partner, a husband or a wife. So that is a concern. But to the point of bringing their politics, do they retain them? Because we tend to get more conservative as we get older, which is on the Republicans to message, to keep an environment, to keep a strong state governance structure so that people have safety, have the economic opportunity, which is really the core of all of this, because then they'll vote their interests. And that's the challenge, to make sure they know their interests. And when they vote that way, they will typically lean towards the right in most of these states.
Thank you, David Webb and Mark Penn. Thank you so much for joining us.